I know that's a big dream, but it starts small and starts with showing people that independence is financially feasible, showing people that it does make an impact in their community. And then it raises the standard of excellence for everyone to get a little fired up about, hey, wait a minute, I should have the ability to provide for myself.
Hey, great day, everybody. Welcome back to the Jim Gale Show. We're so excited to have you back with us today. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Fantastic, brother. How you doing today?
I'm doing excellent as well. You feeling better overall?
Oh man, I guess I'll tell the crowd about that here in a bit. But yeah, infinitely better, like a new upgrade. I've got the upgrade done.
All right, outstanding. Well, I'm glad to hear, and glad you're in great shape to handle our two guests today. This is the first time we've had two guests on at once, but we're thrilled to have Andrew Bittner as well as Jonathan Uber join us today on the show. They have an organization called the HOME DAO. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and it's all part of the decentralized world that is being created today. And we're thrilled to be able to have these two on, to be able to provide some insight into everything that they've got going on, how they're impacting sustainability and self-reliance, and their plans for the future. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. It's great to be here with you, Matthew and Jim, and here with your audience, to be able to share a little light on some of the things that we specialize in and get to have a good conversation about all these interminglings. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, great. And Jonathan, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about who you are and where you're calling in from, and then we'll do the same with Andrew so we can get this kicked off.
Definitely calling in from the beautiful Midwest, near Lake Erie up in Cleveland, Ohio. So super excited to be here and excited to talk food forest abundance as well as HOME DAO and all things sustainability and decentralization.
Great, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and Jonathan is our co-founder here of the HOME DAO, and I'm one of the other founders, and now taking the role because it's decentralized. You know, once you start something, now you have to figure out what your real role is. And so my real role now is on the strategic development side and being able to partner and find ways for our DAO and our community to be able to connect to larger organizations and just make sure that as we continue to grow out the HOME DAO, that it becomes a great success. So Jonathan, why don't you tell them a little bit about what HOME DAO is on the back end?
On the back end, so where I am really working right now is on the tokenomics and governance side. That's a big part of what Web3 and the crypto side is building out how your economics model is going to work and how the money is going to flow and how you're going to use it and how smart contracts will all fit into that. But then the beauty is we get to build out the governance side. So we're in that early stages of it. We're really looking to get some insight from some of our community, but we have a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of great things going on in crypto with governance. It's evolving almost weekly. Every podcast I listen to, there's something new coming out. So it's a great time to be alive and working on this kind of stuff and then get to do it personally.
And how did you get into this, Jonathan?
We dove head first is the best way to put it. That was, what was that, Andy? November. I got a call Thanksgiving weekend, and Andy said, "Hey, do you know what a DAO is?" I said, "No, what is it?" And he gave me the quick overview, and I said, "I'm in." And we just kind of ran from there and just kind of dove in. We really like the idea of bringing in a lot of different people from all different aspects, but it, gives people the freedom to be able to work on what they want to work on for however much time they want to or as much effort they want to. They don't have to be necessarily tied to something forever, but they can really support missions on a smaller and more compact level.
I made Jonathan drive an hour and a half south down to my office. And he told me later that one of the most compelling things that I did was I jumped on this desk and said, we can literally change the world because Web3 is here now. And you can have code law be your layer of trust between other human beings. And now you have communication that can be trusted. And at the same time, we have clean energy that is now cheaper than the grid. And so the only thing that is stopping us is that no one has been able to build a bank-like institution to be able to fund sustainability projects. And with our backgrounds, and with my background as the CEO of an energy company and a development company, we can do it. We can take and combine every energy developer in the country that is having the same problem that we're having, which is that it takes 6 months to a year to finance a project. And if we use this shared bank account structure that decentralized finance and Web3 have baked into the protocols, we literally can solve the number one problem in sustainability. Because as your listeners know, and as you guys have been saying, Matthew and Jim, the solutions are out there. What you don't have is the back-end funding capabilities. And so that's what HOME DAO really does and solves that problem. Is we essentially become the back-end finance infrastructure for all of sustainability that can prove its model.
All right, there's so many things to dig in here on. First of all, what the heck is Web3?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll tell you my end of it first, because what Web3 is basically the natural evolution from Web 2. Web 2, I think, is easily described as Facebook and Twitter. You can communicate on centralized platforms, but to go into that marketplace of communication, it's still centralized. If Twitter wants to shut you down, you're in Web 2, if they can. And in Web 3, what you have is a new layer of decentralization, a new compounded, beautiful opportunity for connection, but simultaneously the ownership and the equity is decentralized as well. And so content creators, content communicators, and value can also be transacted. So you can literally send money in form of communication as well. So it just completely breaks the mold, adds a new dimension to human capability for communication across the planet, because we no longer have to work through banks. We no longer have to work through centralized governments. We no longer have to work through centralized companies. We can literally connect peer to peer about all of the things that we want to communicate.
I mean, that seems so logical and epic. Now, so nobody's got a shut off button. Aren't there major servers and people that can kind of control the internet, or no?
From the personal aspect, the best way to describe it is you own your own keys. So when you have your own crypto wallet, you own your own keys. There is a little bit of inherent risk on yourself, but you take it on personally. But it gives you that freedom to be able to move throughout the different systems and apps and layers without any permission. That's the whole point of it, is permissionless. You can kind of come in and out and go throughout it. These different layers and protocols reach sort of a consensus. And the whole point is that it being decentralized allows it to not be shut down in a sense. You'll see some protocols that are a little bit more centralized. So you may have seen them been able to do that kind of thing. But at the true essence is kind of the Ethereum model, to where there's not enough people to get together to shut down that at this point. I know a lot of people make that case, but it's just not at the heart of what Ethereum does and how it's built and how it's meant to run. It's meant to be fully decentralized at the best way possible, super efficient, and allows you to enter and exit that system permissionlessly. You own your own keys, which means you're your own bank. It's not like you have to go down to the bank, put in a request to get your money, and they tell you, hey, you got to wait 2 days, and then they got to go find your money. Or if you're trying to sell a stock and they got to go find somebody to buy it for you, it kind of just works back and forth, and it's more of that peer-to-peer type of system.
That makes sense. So have you guys ever heard of Cordal by any chance?
We have. We've talked to one of the lead developers at Cordal.
Okay, we invested in Cordal significantly, and or in the hardware aspect of it and the labor aspect of it. And I love the idea of it. How is Web3 different than Cordal?
Cordal is, I would say, at its heart, beautifully aligned with everything that Web3 is. But Quartal, I would say, is just a more specific application that would run on a Web3 type of platform. Okay. And Quartal is the classic version of like a really, really fundamentally sound, sustainable structure where decentralization is its primary core. Some of the other mechanisms like Ethereum and some of the other larger plays in blockchain have realized from their perspective that they wanted to go big and centralized first in order to gain enough traction to then be able to decentralize. Where I think Quartal's beauty of its way of doing it is that they're doing it from the inside out and saying we'll never be centralized, we'll always be decentralized and build out. So I think it's a platform that if everybody embraced it would be absolutely amazing, but I think it's a really hard thing to get everybody involved in something that fast.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is beautiful. This seems like a fundamental piece of the freedom puzzle, like without which communications could be completely shut down at a whim of the controller.
Yes, and one of the reasons why we think that it's so important to have a community funding mechanism is so that if the banking institutions decide to no longer pay for people becoming accountable and free and sustainable on their own, hey, we're here.
Which I think they're going to do.
Which, we certainly don't wish that on the world at large. But from our perspective, we would be silly to not build it ourselves.
Yeah, well, and we have to realize already we have central banks in almost every country around the world. So that's step one. And all of those operate on the SWIFT system, or at least most do. So they've already got step two mostly complete. So if my crystal ball tells me anything, we're headed that direction real quick.
Yeah, we need an alternative communication system. Every Freedom Farm Academy is going to have a ham radio, a Quartal node, and a Web3. So anyway, we can get into the details of that. I'm excited. So now tell me a little bit more about your banking structure, because there's so many connections that we've made lately that seem to align perfectly and fill in pieces of the freedom puzzle. So let's dig into that piece a little bit.
Sure. So when it comes to funding sustainable projects, I'll give you my background, because before I got into the HOME DAO, I've spent 12 years in the energy industry. And we currently, through my existing company I founded called Guaranteed Clean Energy, we build sustainable infrastructure for communities. We serve K through 12 school districts and municipalities, teaching them how to responsibly use their funds and build sustainable infrastructure for themselves, right? And it's community-focused work. It's pretty incredible. But what we found was we were literally going to the banks with $10 million sustainable infrastructure projects with the cleanest off-taker for risk that you could possibly have. Anybody that knows real estate will understand when I say that you're bringing a municipal grade credit with A-rated bonding to a bank and saying, hey, we're going to do this sustainability project, and it just happens to be solar panels. If I did that with light bulbs, the bank would fund it in a quarter of a second. Because I was bringing them solar, they said, oh, well, wait, we just need to go through this. Oh, well, wait, we just need to go through this. And we've literally had projects that have taken over 2.5 years to fund, because the banking system did not want to fund independence of energy for whatever reason, whether that be vetting or whether that be something more mischievous.
It's more mischievous.
Well,
for sure.
You don't need to say it, Andy. We will.
We will. You don't have to. I'll be that guy.
Yeah.
And so we literally just said, oh my gosh. And then we stacked deal upon deal. They said, well, this is too small of a deal. Can you get more? And then we showed them a portfolio of $200 million in infrastructure projects across multiple communities across the United States with the safest infrastructure grade credit. And they said, well, maybe. And so we said, you know what? If we've got this big of a group, why would we take and try to teach the banks how to fund infrastructure when it's one of the lowest risk types of assets that you can build with some of the highest returns out there of any other type of construction and in infrastructure? So we said, we're going to just build this ourselves. And so that's what we are now, is essentially a funding mechanism that can come through and fund short-term projects, mid-grade construction. We can be the hard money to do infrastructure, and we can provide the long-term debt on 20 or 30-year infrastructure projects and solve that biggest problem in all of energy infrastructure, period.
This is freaking fantastic. I was just talking to Oliver Studd yesterday, him and Professor Richard Werner. Richard Werner was the guy who started the QE. He was the guy that came up with the concept of QE. Do you know Professor Richard Werner by any chance? So he's huge all over Europe and Japan. And even here, a lot of big players would reach out to him until he broke away from the system because they corrupted his intentional ideas. They took them and manipulated them and changed them. He is coming to market. I believe his network is called the Valhalla Network, with the DAO banking system globally. He's massively connected globally. And this seems like the perfect kind of connection where together, especially with a DAO type of structure, there's so much money sitting on the sidelines waiting to go into the most logical thing. And this is the most logical thing. Decentralized food, water, and energy is the best investment in the world starting right now.
Jim, can you let everybody know what QE is?
Quantitative easing. But of course, it's been manipulated and used as a tool of enslavement, right? They send $10 trillion. They call it QE. That was theft. It wasn't QE. A few percent of that 10 trillion went to the people. The rest of that 10 trillion went to the corporations that control the world and that produce the poisons.
Yeah, another good term for quantitative easing is money printing that goes to other people and not the shareholders.
There you go. Oh, Kyle, this is just amazing how the synchronicities are coming together nowadays.
Well, and this is one of the big advantages of code law being trusted, is that when you choose, and I think this is one of the reasons why it's really easy for a lot of people to understand the value of Bitcoin once they get into understanding it, with that being kind of the grandfather of blockchain, is that when you say, look, there are only 21 million Bitcoins and that's it. No one can print money. No one can do anything else. That protects you. And that's the same thing that a lot of your really well-run DAOs have. But as Jonathan can tell you, not every DAO and not every Web3 project is created equal. And I think that's been some of the challenge early on, is that this is such an amazing idea and such an evolution in human history and in human communication that it's a bit of a gold run as well. And it's a little bit of the Wild West. And so unless you know the real back end to it, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt in some projects. And so we are a little worried about promoting the entire space in and of itself, and more or less finding those projects that are really focused on solving crucial problems in humanity that bridge the crypto world to the real world. And I think that that's where a lot of the validity of our project has stuck out for traditional minded people, is that we're going, hey, look, these are not magical internet tokens. This is bridging real world infrastructure assets that change communities from the inside out, that happen to have a trusted ledger that's doing the accounting publicly. And that public accounting trust is the valid part of it. It's not that the token is some magical thing that is, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be worth $1 million. Speculation is not how our DAO functions. It functions bridging these worlds of trust and building infrastructure in your backyard to give you freedom.
My gosh.
So if anybody wants to look up, sorry to cut you off there, Jim, Richard Werner, it's actually Werner. He's German, which is why that sounds like Werner instead of the W.
Yeah. And if I could say one more thing on Valhalla, because here's the fun part, right? Because of Web3, Jim sits here and says, hey, there's another guy doing something really similar to what you're doing. And I will tell you, probably the first thing that happened to Jonathan is the same thing that happened to me. And I said inside, yes, there's somebody else that we can work together with to solve humanity's problems. But I can tell you as an entrepreneur 10 years ago, if I were on your show, Jim, and you would have said, hey, look, there's another guy who's doing a sustainability energy company to serve schools and municipalities. As a entrepreneur, I would have said, well, I'm better. No, right? And I think this is the other thing that's happening in the Web3 space is that naturally we're finding that it's better to work together and that rising tides float all ships.
100%. We're in a thing where if we want to take our competitiveness and put it to action, then let's collaborate and compete against the slave master, right? Because that's the ultimate victory of all time. So let's compete our energies. And anybody who starts a DAO is already past the idea, already gets this. So when I heard you say DAO, I'm like, oh my God, because they want to do a DAO as well. And a DAO is a humanity-owned instrument. Decentralized is the foundation of a DAO, right? That's the freaking most cool thing. Now, I want to share too about our Sprouts and Yield coin that we are integrating into this. And we've created the foundation of the most logical digital asset in the history of the world. The most logical and beneficial. And that's a big statement. And I'm going to qualify that statement. Then you tell me if I'm nuts or not here when I'm done. Our Yield coin is directly linked to food production, to ethical permaculture-style food production based on caloric value. And this is, by the way, very easy to determine. You have a certain plant, you have a certain general caloric value for that plant. So instead of being mined, which is a liability to society, the mining of Bitcoin is a net energy liability. And you've got a coin that is it's a coin that isn't backed by anything other than the market confidence in the coin, right? And the usefulness and so on. But it doesn't have a tangible backing like the dollar used to be backed by gold until 1971 when Nixon, the criminal president, took it off. I think all presidents are pretty much criminal, But anyway, now we've got a coin that's farmed, that is literally farmed. That means when somebody grows food, this coin is generated. And instead of being operated and instead of this whole system being run by the gamblers and gamers, it's actually run by and stewarded by the ethical producers of our world. So instead of the gamblers controlling the currency, the producers actually get to start with the currency and then spread it that way. So that's our coin. That's this tip of the iceberg on it. There's many, many more layers of details, which I'll definitely get to you. Our coin incentivizes food production. It incentivizes community collaboration, and it has the ability to supplant all fiat currencies around the world in a minute using production. It's pretty powerful. So we want to find a way to integrate this into the system.
Jim, I think there's so many beautiful things out of what you just communicated there. And I think one of the heart of the intention and beauty of what YieldCoin that you're describing is that it's another one of these systems that can be transparent and connects the digital trust world that we all have now as a new tool for society. And we have this digital trust as a new tool for human communication. And it connects to the real world of actual vegetables and fruits and food and caloric intake. Now, that being said, playfully, let's talk, though, about Bitcoin, because I think there is a challenge that that is very realistic in saying that Bitcoin isn't backed by anything. But let me give you a new perspective on that as an energy guy. I think, from my perspective, that Bitcoin is backed by something tangible in the real world. And that tangible thing in the real world is energy production. And what I'm seeing happen on large scale as an energy developer is we're getting calls from Bitcoin miners, and they're saying, hey, look, we know we can't mine Bitcoin using coal. We know we can't do it because it's too expensive. We've done the research. We know renewable energy is cheaper to run my Bitcoin mining facility. And so what we're actually experiencing on the front lines of the energy development side is that Bitcoin mining is actually driving down the cost of electricity, driving down the cost of producing renewables, because now you have more demand. Yeah. And so you're getting more streamlined logistics. You're getting better opportunities to purchase more and more systems and opening up new and new opportunities for developers. So I think in the short term, as big of a challenge as it is that we have mining going on with Bitcoin, I think over the mid to long term, I think it's very possible, from my narrow viewpoint of energy, that Bitcoin could be one of the actual great saviors of driving down the cost of electricity and increasing renewable and sustainable power generation on the planet.
Wow, that's way cool. Love to dig more.
Very interesting perspective that I've not considered before, and very well said.
It could be way off, but it's the viewpoint that we have from our perspective as energy developers, right? And what we're seeing. And, I'd like to think that optimistically, that's a very possible solution.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a lot of it has to do, there's a lot of innovation in this space, and there's a low barrier to entry. So everybody's able to kind of move. Bitcoin has been where it's been with the energy production, but they've heard the people talking about it long enough that it uses too much energy. It's got that bad rap right now, and they're actually trying to change it in real time and not waiting until maybe there's a regulation or there's some kind of real problem. It's being actively done, which is the great part about our industry right now.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. And then it all comes back from my filters of reality, the Freedom Farm Academy, and our ability to bring these to the community, right? To bring these systems into hubs all around the world where people can walk in because it's a beautiful space with food and chickens and water features and all this beauty. And then they can learn, well, wait a minute, I can actually take a digital asset, whether it be Bitcoin or yield coin, and I can create that here by growing food, or I can trade that here and completely decentralize this system, which of course is instant freedom when we're off the system. So then how do we bring, what kind of energy systems can we bring to our society that you guys have some skills with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, these Freedom Farm Academies to me are fundamentally so important to every community to have a lighthouse or a beacon of understanding. And so when I first heard about what you guys were doing, it blew me away because it was one of those things that I thought I was going to have to build. And I'm so glad to know you guys are doing it. Yes. And so I could focus on other things that we do better, like sustainable energy and renewable energy production. So when it comes to these Freedom Farm Academies, which are essentially just case studies for every community, I think the renewable energy for each one of these facilities is going to be a case study too. And so, for example, if you're going to do a Freedom Farm Academy in Chicago, guess what? We're probably going to use some wind, right? And probably not as much solar, although solar works great in the Midwest. But you better believe if we do a Freedom Farm Academy in Florida, that renewable energy is going to be based on solar. And if we can get it by the coast, we'll tap into a little bit of wind and some solar. And maybe we can do some saltwater batteries. And maybe we can play with some ocean tides and do some of these things. But I think one of the big things that happened in renewable energy is that over the last decade, there's been so many different choices for renewable energy. And unfortunately, what happened was the oil companies took control of the narrative. And it looked like the wind guys were fighting the solar guys, and the battery guys were fighting the wind guys. And there was this big, it appeared to be in-house battle. And the reality is every renewable energy developer is looking at each other going, we're not fighting. This is just use the best stuff for where you are geographically. And I think that that's an important thing for everybody to fully grasp from the inside out. From the professionals that are building these systems, there is no infighting over which system should be used. It's engineering is going to determine which system should be used. And then that engineering turns into
efficiency.
What's good for people, what's good for the planet, and what's good for profit.
Absolutely. And efficiency is the key. Which one is going to get you your best ROI based on the zone, the wind, all the different features in there? And by the way, here, it's OUC and Duke and these big energy companies that have lobbyists that they pay money so they can find ways to stifle the solar industry and these other industries. They find ways to control because they know that those are the death of them, especially here in Florida, when solar is a no freaking brainer in Florida. People can get solar in Florida where they literally get a check in hand for their next year's bills completely paid, and a guarantee. And this isn't just a guarantee based on random stuff. It's a guarantee based on productivity of the last 10 or 20 years, where they don't have any bills for energy, where their actual energy bill, especially when they're going up like this, overpays for the cost of owning the mortgage on the system itself.
Yeah, one of the other lies about clean energy that's happening at the narrative of the utility companies is that you need to create your own solar on your house and then tap it into our grid as the utility company. And I want to make sure everybody knows that when you build any kind of renewable energy, the last resort is tapping into the grid with that. And your first resort for best payback and all financial viewpoint of that is going to be use the power yourself first. And then if you have a surplus, consider tapping in and giving that to the grid. But I think the utilities have taken a really weird narrative that I'm shocked to find actually resonates with people, because we do not ever have to tap into existing grids. You have the right, if you're a business owner or a homeowner, to produce your own power on site. And you do not have to ask permission from the utility company to do so.
Well, there's definitely some places where they do limit, like you must stay connected to the utility grid. There's certain stuff where that is definitely a rule.
Here in Florida, it's a law. You have to connect unless, and we got a special exemption at Gulf Island. We have no grid. We're completely 100% off grid with redundancy on energy systems. But because we didn't have a grid next to us, that was allowed. Otherwise, it's a law where you have to, which to me is complete force and violence.
Wow.
One of the things they did here was that they limited the size of the solar array that you could put on. And it was 10 kilowatts. So it prevented people from really putting enough solar on their house to really be able to run everything. So it really forced them, and I'm in Canada, by the way. So it really forced the population to really stay connected to the grid and operate under a net metering system. And the thing that happens here is that your net metering, you get credits. You don't actually get dollars back. So you're still saving money, but they'll just pull money off your they're not actually giving you a check. And then they would limit, they'd tell you, you actually can't get solar because there's too many other people with solar in this specific area that are connected to the grid. And our systems, I'm being the utility company, our systems aren't up. They haven't been updated. So we're actually maxed out the number of homes that can actually be connected to the grid in this area. So too bad, so sad, you can't go solar.
That sounds communist to me. The fact that you can't supply your own
Yeah.
sources.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you put it on. Or they would say, we have enough capacity here where you could put 3.5 kilowatts on your house and nothing else. But they also, if you're in any city, you could not go off grid, in my particular province anyways.
Wow. Criminal. It's absolutely part of the criminal control mechanism. In 11 states, this is back a few years ago, you could not take water off of your roof and put it into a rain barrel.
Yeah.
That's criminal. So what we're talking about is saying, I did not comply to that. And we're talking about subverting that criminal slave structure by completely doing the opposite and by going completely off grid and demonstrating off grid.
It sounds like we'll just need to build it first. And then once we have all of these things across the world, it will be obvious to the average voter that they can go and make that change in a governmental way in their community as well. I know that's a big dream, but it starts small and starts with showing people that independence is financially feasible, showing people that it does make an impact in their community. And then it raises the standard of excellence for everyone to get a little fired up about, hey, wait a minute, I should have the ability to provide for myself. This is insane.
I'm fired up. I'm telling you.
No, Andy. You can't just provide for yourself. You got to think about everybody else, right? That's the socialism type of thing coming out here, which reality is you should be able to provide for yourself. And because you're freeing up more space for others. So you're actually helping both.
Very well said, Matthew.
And, we go back to the central banking stuff. It's kind of on my head because I was watching something about it last night and the impact that they've had in countries all around the world as they get their claws dug into countries, and how they subvert really the people by setting up these central bank control systems. And the governments are really they're lent money by the central bankers, and we, the people, are the ones paying back that interest through our income taxes to service the debt that our government decides to take based on us, right? My productivity tied to my birth certificate throughout my life is going to be how my government is able to get money from the central bank, which then I have to pay back through my income taxes year in, year out, just to service that debt. And when you understand that the dollars that are loaned essentially to our governments are loaned with interest attached to it, and if that's the only way they can get money, there's no way we can ever get out of the debt cycle to the central bankers. So we're essentially locked into a slavery type of system when you understand those fundamentals. And, that really is, in my personal belief, as Matthew speaking, that is their intention, right? It's the way to create the new world order and lock us into a system of perpetual slavery is through the central banks. And that is, in my belief, what they're trying to do right now with this whole disease stuff and virus stories and, name your thing that fits on top of this. But this ultimate arm of control is coming down from the central bankers.
Well, and I think from the perspective of HOME DAO, one of the things that's really exciting for us when it comes to really diving into our energy freedom platform, and as we were starting to look at things like Bitcoin 5 or 6 years ago, and make these changes. I mean, we didn't want to launch our Web3 platform until we knew that the world at large had embraced something that was actually possible. If we would have tried to start HOME DAO 4 years ago, it wouldn't have worked. And we needed for everything else to develop and grow. And when I decided to jump off the diving pad with Jonathan head first into the water, a lot of it was because I talked to a friend of mine from Venezuela, and he was explaining to me as I sat in the living room with his family how much inflation had ruined their lives, because as they live in Ohio now, but when they go to visit their family in Venezuela, imagine having $100,000 worth of savings that your family built up for a lifetime as hard laborers in Venezuela. And then waking up on a Tuesday and your $100,000 has the value of $500 total. And you've spent your entire life building your savings, and the government spending and debt structure through larger things that you had nothing to do with is now gone. And that's when I realized how big it was for something like Bitcoin to come into play, and then how many seeds we're going to sprinkle from that as we start to build commodities. Because I think Bitcoin is one commodity of money now. And I think what we're talking about with yield coin is a commodity of food. And what we're talking about with HOME DAO and our token, the HOME token, we're talking about the commodity of infrastructure for sustainability. And so now what I see is a world of commodities that are built on these trusted layers of real accounting and banking, that no one can just magically go and print and steal the money from the bank accounts of every single person in that organization. And I think that's the profound beauty that we now have, but also the sad truth of what did exist in the past. And, these stories are all just, they're so almost conspiracy theory laden of how deep rooted the challenges were. But in reality, it's just flat, straight economics. If you take my $100,000 and it's worth $500,000, you've done something principally to ruin the trust in that financial system, and I shouldn't be part of it. And I want to look for every trusted financial system possible now in the future. And it's that energy that has popped out of the experience of millions of people worldwide that I think helped create this movement. In Bitcoin in 5-6 years has been able to make the change that it has. And then look at the thousands of seeds that have come off of it. I think we're at a profound time in human history that we're all getting to experience, as this uncomfort level is turning into some really beautiful design systems.
Oh, it is. And the way you just explained it, these digital assets, they go together very, very well. I love Bitcoin. It was one of the best investments I made quite a while back. And I love the other coin we talk about with the commodities, and energy coin too, right? There could be an energy coin. So we've got food, we've got commodities, we've got the ease of trade of Bitcoin and the ability to trade it for almost anything nowadays. So there's a way to structure these together, or just let the DAO just naturally say, okay, this is what I want to do with that. This is what I want to do with that. It's about getting the word out. It's about collaborating with the message, creating a roadmap to a design that goes out to the world, right? And then the world says, oh my gosh, it's all here. I want to pick that piece of the puzzle and that piece. And everybody becomes decentralized and self-reliant. Every community around the world. That's going to happen. It's happening already, but it's going to happen exponentially over the next 5-6 years.
I think something we got to be aware of, especially in these Western countries, me, Canada, you guys, United States, is we think what happened in Venezuela can't happen here, right? We're too comfortable in our certainty that our economies are rock solid, our democracies are secure, right? Name your thing. It can't happen here. Except you have people like Robert Kiyosaki, one of the, at least in my opinion, one of the best teachers of wealth principles. He always talks about savers or losers. And if you just understand how putting your fiat currency and leaving it with the bank really doesn't get you anywhere, you're actually losing money comparative to inflation, that you must get that money moving for you, put into things that pay you, right? Assets that are producing dollars or producing value, and then diversify those assets. And it's not like what we're taught by Wall Street, diversify your stock portfolio in a variety of places. Now that's paper assets. That's an asset class, but diversify your assets into different asset classes. And maybe you don't understand the 4 or 5 different asset classes, to do all of them, but maybe you're doing 2 or 3 different asset classes, and that's the major thing for you. But the important part that I want to get out of all this is that our economies here and where you guys are, we are going through serious inflation already, and it's nothing yet, right? I think we are just on the cusp of what's about to come. And are you ready? What's going to happen if you woke up one Tuesday morning and your $100,000 is now worth 500? Now what you going to do? And here's the interesting thing in that time. If you had, let's just say, 100,000 in silver, well, would that silver now be worth $500, or would that 100,000 in silver still be worth what it was in silver when you went to bed Monday night, right? And the reality is that silver would still be worth what it was worth. It's not losing its value, right?
Relative to real world items.
Relative to the real world items. Yeah. So it's a store of value. And I'm just using silver as an example, but compared to that fiat currency that really crashed and went to zero, there's other assets that you can take your fiat and buy and have them, if this crash happens, not divert to nothings and be actually worth more or holding their store of value in comparative to.
Which is why I think what we're building and what you guys are building is so fundamental, because we actually have that bridge of connecting something from the digital trust world into the real world. And it's tangible. Ours is infrastructure. Food is one of those really valuable things that you're going to need. And it's all these basic needs. And honestly, that's what the Home DAO is here to do. It's not, we specialize in energy infrastructure. And so I talk about that because I'm an energy specialist, right? But in our curve of things that the Home DAO is building infrastructure for, a food forest abundance farm is a piece of infrastructure, right? A Freedom Farm Academy at $1 million is infrastructure. So food is there. Education is one of these things that requires infrastructure. Communication and having ham radio setups, but also having the computer systems and being able to have things like a helium network that enables you to send information through radio signals and packets of information through long distance Wi-Fi. And then you talk about affordable housing also being some basic needs. These are all things that our DAO is here to help pay for the infrastructure of. We just started with the really easy stuff for us, which was aligning millions of dollars of energy developers all over the country and now all over the world. Our pipeline now with the Home DAO has projects from 10 plus countries that are putting all these pieces together. And it's so fundamental to have that connection, because that's the problem with fiat dollars, is that without a vote, you can print something that isn't backed by anything else, and then they just report it 3 months later. And it's that same fiat system that everyone's looking at crypto and going, well, that's just digital, that isn't realizing when they look at fiat, that's just digital too.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think what your viewers and what you guys understand is that bridge to the real world is what gives it that inherent value, whether it's backed by food or gold or energy. If it has a backing of something real, that's when it becomes super valuable.
Awesome. Gosh. So next steps for us, let's get the Freedom Farm Academy deck is now done. I just saw the next version of it today. It's mind blowing. Like, everybody asks worst case scenario. Okay. Worst case scenario is, well, worst case is, okay, a nuke goes, whatever. I'm not considering those worst case scenarios because what's the freaking point? If that's going to happen, I don't have any control over that anyway. What I do have control over is the land that goes with it. So worst case scenario is the business doesn't work, but now you've got a food forest that gets more productive every year. It creates more value every year. So even if you just built the Freedom Farm Academy and didn't use it as a Freedom Farm Academy, the value of it would double in the first 2 or 3 years in a normal economy, let alone in an economy where there's a food supply chain disaster happening now. Right? So I'm excited to team up and find ways to integrate our skills and bring this to the whole world.
And we are too. Food is one of the faster paybacks of any of the types of infrastructure that we're looking at. And as much as I love clean electricity, I'd rather have food than have power. if I can only choose one. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful thing. And so from the Home DAO's perspective, we want to be able to supply the funding mechanisms and make it clean and easy for every person that wants to own a Freedom Farm Academy to be able to submit their project to the Home DAO for funding as you're growing these at tremendous pace and tremendous speed so that we can make that process go. And then likewise, we want also those people that are part of Freedom Farm Academies to be able to be instrumental in both the governance and the financial participation of the growing resources of the Home DAO. Because let's just imagine for a second that all infrastructure was funded through the Home DAO. That's not what's going to happen, but let's just say a large amount is. We're talking about $1 trillion worth of energy infrastructure alone that needs to happen in the United States. Imagine a banking resource type of unit. Now, we are not a bank by any stretch of the imagination. We're not a credit union. We are an organization's shared resource account. But we do make money on interest. And imagine if all of that money kept compounding and paying back its own shareholders and its own token holders, the amount of resources that it would continue to grow abundantly to be able to expand the mission is tremendous. But beautifully, it grows a little bit at a time, but a little bit at a time in interest terms doubles very quickly.
And check this out. So when we put in a Freedom Farm Academy food forest, every single plant that we put in generates a yield coin. That yield coin can be owned by the community. And then when the community says, I would like some food, here's my yield coin in exchange for the food that they help to fund, right? This can be used in so many different ways.
Definitely sounds like the connection to the Valhalla network is extremely important in all this too. Between the three of our organizations, there's something magical here.
You couldn't be more right. And one of the other things that I want to talk to you guys about is the governance of all of this, because I think this is another really profound change, is that you actually not only have a shared resource account that you can go and in our today's society, unfortunately, resources are one of the biggest ways to make an impact because voting has become such a small impact. But our goal is to be able to raise the value of a person's vote in integrity as well. And so that's where Jonathan spends a ton of his time, is on the backside, because essentially what we're looking at here is from a basic needs resource situation. If you think of all of our basic needs, like food and water and energy as public goods, we can have a vote now on what we should do about those public goods and how we can grow and build those. And that vote really matters. And so we're launching a campaign at the Home DAO as our initial campaign so that we can get a ton of feedback from people who care about sustainability, who care about clean energy, who care about clean food production. We want them to come and join our ecosystem, and we're going to have voting rights for everyone that comes in and does that. And so they're going to have an impact over our funds and where we're going to deploy our resources, so that we'll have both voting mechanisms for voters and for shareholders that come into play. And we're learning as we go on what the best mechanisms are for that. Jonathan's one of the leaders in the field and working with the other thousands of leaders in the field of governance in Web3, but there's a profound impact that's happening there. And Jonathan, I want to make sure you get a chance to kind of talk about some of that, because I think this is a huge thing that's happening in sustainability, is the value of a decentralized vote as well.
A lot of what we've been talking about probably for the last 15, 20 minutes reminds me of all of the data layers that we currently have no control over, right? We give all of our data away. So when you talk about this of owning your own vote, but also owning your ability to spend your money where you're at on your different resources, this is going to create something in the future for us of a data layer where we'll own our own data and maybe be able to even monetize that on our end, which then helps us understand our ecosystems, but to be able to vote better in all of the different ecosystems that we're going to be a part of. So you're going to have two layers of that. You're going to be able to monetize your data, but you're also going to be able to vote on it and use it how you want to. Right now, really the only way to vote for your food is how you spend it at the store, right? And we're limited in that a lot right now, as we've talked about inflation. Story every week about how, even the wealthier people in our country are having to be penny pinchers when they go to the store to buy lower quality food and just lower quality everything, to where we don't have a system set up producing the highest quality of food, which would then pay those benefits down the line for health. That's one of the things I took away from what we were talking about, of these food forests of producing high quality food, which the dividend is much healthier people, which then reduces that on all of the health system that we saw through everything that we went through. And all of those are votes. How you spend that money, how you use that money, all of that, that's all votes. But eventually you're also going to be able to have that vote in the ecosystems that you're part of in these different Web3s, of saying, this is what matters to me, this is what is high quality, and this is what freedom means to me in these. And it'll give people a much different voice, rather than maybe just one voice at this store and one vote every 4 years. So that's what I think is going to be awesome about the governance parts of all of these.
Love it.
And the data layers being owned by the individual is incredibly profound, because as these data layers get turned into dashboards to where the individual can actually understand what their data means, that really can make a profound impact on the daily habits of individuals as well. And so, people like the four of us already have this burning desire and intention for sustainability, but maybe there's somebody that's on the fence right now just thinking about it. But then once they really get a chance to see the data like we do in our everyday lives, that burning intensity will continue to grow. And I think that's one of the profound things that happens for some of the communities that we work with, because when we come in originally as sustainability advisors, everyone thinks we're tree huggers. And then when we sit down with the business manager or the finance manager and we say, well, hey, this is going to mean a few extra $1 million this year in your budget, they go, wait, what? We receive $1 million? And we go, yeah, that's what we've been trying to communicate. It's cheaper to be sustainable rather than constantly having high bills that you have no control over and you have no visibility over and you have no independence on. If you control it, it's cheaper.
Big time. Yeah, it's amazing. Wow. Awesome, guy. Well, I'm so thankful that we've connected, and thanks to the shout out. Who connected us? And
it was the Cordal guys, actually.
It was, wasn't it?
It really was. The Cordal guys is how we found your mission.
Oh, that's freaking perfect. Well, man, I'm super excited that we're on this path. And so we'll start making these connections, and we'll be the architects, the designers of the free society that we are going to help create.
Wonderful. And for any of your viewers or listeners that want to get directly involved, we do have a Discord open. so that you can bring your best ideas to our Discord and have discussions there around any of these platforms. We have our Twitter with @HOME DAO. So feel free to tweet us. And you can follow along for some of the updates in our platform. Our platform is going to be launching sometime late fourth quarter or early first quarter of next year with the actual token launch itself. But right now we are bringing on essentially our founding community members in the launch of our NFT drop. And so we're dropping 777 NFTs so that we can identify those people that really want to be part of the mission early on and be rewarded tremendously, but also that just want to be those people that are actively engaged in the solution. So if that's something that any of your listeners are interested about, we have a happy home for you and can't wait to hear your ideas and help us grow in that way too. So sorry for the shameless plug, but I think it's important to let people know that if they get fired up about this, there's somewhere to put that energy in action.
All right. The Home DAO. And do you have a website as well, or?
We do. It's thehomedao.com, and DAO is spelled DAO.
Yep. Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
I want to get in on those NFT drops.
I think there's a lot of people that want to do that. Let's get everybody in, right? And we've got some really cool things that are coming to be airdropped out to those NFT holders. All kinds of unique ways of being able to reinforce amazing sustainable solutions. So we're going to have a lot of fun with those early members because it only happens once. And think about this. I mean, we literally could end up becoming the world's largest utility company and the world's largest bank. Now, I'm not, again, using those actual terms. The SEC I'm not calling myself that, but if you think about our model, that's essentially what we become. And it's just a newer version of that. It's the people's version of that. And if you're saying, hey, look, I'd like to be part of that institution, I think it might be successful. That's what's possible with what we're building. And I think that's what's just so insanely cool is that everyone can be part of that. And it's not Jonathan or Jim or Matt's company. This is all of our companies and all of our organizations to grow. So we're tickled that it exists in humanity.
That's beautiful, bro. All right.
Does it tap into anything around the health side? Just curious, as another layer on top of it, because obviously the health of humanity is extremely important, and we know that helping people consume food they're growing themselves that's poison free is going to have a drastic impact in health. But we have a medical system that, to put it bluntly, has also been corrupted and taken over. So what can we do as far as that goes in order to reclaim control over our health, get truth around science in that space that's really avoiding the dollars to play, right? My study shows this works because you paid me enough money, and I'm making sure it works so I can get your money next time too, instead of here's the truth about what really went on. And I still do have access to dollars because I am a trustworthy scientist in medicine or whatever. I guess that's a long way of saying what's going on with the medical side in this, or does it fit?
Yeah. So health fits in tremendously. If you don't have your health, you don't have a lot of other things. And there's two really intelligent and strong and amazing women in Jonathan's and I's life, who are our wives, who are both doctors. So health plays a huge part in both of our lives. And I can tell you that my wife, who's a family practice doctor, when she sees her patients, it comes down to two things. What are they eating and what are they thinking?
I like your wife as a doc. That's amazing. That's perfect.
And so is health a huge component of it? Yes. In our subtle way, we're describing it by making sustainable regenerative food and sustainable regenerative educational systems so that we can teach people how much control they have over their own thoughts and their own lives. And that's really hard to do if you drink 12 Diet Pepsis a day. Or even worse, if you drink 12 beers a day. And I understand those. I've done both. And realistically, what it comes down to is if we can find that balance of good health and good food and good thinking, it's amazing what else steps right in line.
Love it.
Yeah, most definitely. What a great conversation, gentlemen.
This was really fun. We love your mission. We love what you guys are doing. And, we'll be a part of it in any way we can.
Well, definitely get you thinking big. If anything, I hope we inspired our listeners to be thinking big. Today is another tremendous opportunity to change the world, right? We have so many technologies and ideas that are available to all of us now that give us the privilege of determining our own direction and self-reliance in life. We're in a very incredible time, massive transformation, massive awakening. I think the internet's gotten away from our controllers, and truth is being brought to light. And because there's so many brilliant and innovative people out here trying to figure out solutions, simple solutions to these complex problems, we're ending up in a much better place overall. And you can see it unfolding every day in front of us. I know Jim thinks much along the same lines as I in that regard, and that this is the most joyful and biggest opportunistic time to be alive, where we're creating a world that truly is abundant. This stuff is already here. It's just a matter of helping us realize it. So I hope for all of our listeners today that this was one of those conversations that got you really thinking big about all the things that are possible.
I really well said. And if I could just add that the timing of all this to have something like decentralized trust, decentralized value, decentralized money at the same time as in human cooperation, we can now communicate across the entire planet instantly. And we've advanced so far technologically that we can produce clean energy cheaper than ripping mountains down and burning them. This is an unbelievable time in human history to be alive. This is the decade that goes into the history books. This is the 20 years that changes forever. And the most exciting part is we actually get a chance to do something about it in our way. This is our war that we get to fight. And thank goodness we're not slamming, bullets against each other. We're slamming ideas against each other to find the greatest possible way for humanity to cooperate and be beautiful together.
I think one of the most important things you said there, and it's been lost in most every institution today, is trust. I don't trust my government anymore. I don't trust the medical system the same way anymore. I don't trust the science system the same way anymore. I don't trust my bank the same way anymore, right? The trust, the politicians, right? It's being eroded. The trust has gone to the wayside. And if what you're talking about here can bring that truth and transparency in the accounting, in the governance, in all of the systems, right? The funding for science, we can bring us back to a place where we can have trust in public health. We can have trust in what the doctor is saying. We can have trust in what our banking institutions or the people that are controlling how our money is moved say, or our politicians, or whatever the thing is. It's been taken away.
Right. But it's trust-based in transparency.
Yes.
Then you don't really have to trust anything. I don't have to trust that that's an apple growing on that apple tree that I just, hey, give me $1. Go pick the apple yourself. It's right there. Oh, cool. Okay. I don't, it just, the transparency takes away the need for trust, because when you need trust, then there's some kind of weird thing that you just don't know about. It's all crystal clear. It's right there in front of us. I love that model.
Yeah, I love that model too. So amazing.
Good stuff, guys. Well, thank you so much. We'll be
here
immediately and starting to make all the connections. And then we'll come back on maybe in a few months and we'll talk about the connections we made and how much momentum we have changing the world with millions more people.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Jim Gale Show today. Remember to like, subscribe, share it, click on those notifications so you're always up to date with our next releases. And Andrew, Jonathan, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today. And as always, Jim, lots of love, man. Thanks so much, everybody.
Peace and love.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the show. You can check out more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and your favorite podcast apps. Check out our show notes for any websites linked to this episode, including where to connect with us on social media.
We appreciate you dropping by today. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you'll be updated with each episode.
And visit us at thejimgaleshow.com to check out all of our exclusive content. We appreciate you dropping by.